It's 9, so let us know if they're ready. I think he just gave a thumbs up. You're too young for that.
John, you're good.
All right, it's 9 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States, the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, for all.
All right, first up, roll call. So again, for the recording, when I call your name, if you say your full name. Heidi?
Eddie Youngworth.
Jim?
James Nickel.
Dawn Thomas. Suzanne Bayhan.
Mike?
Mike Childs.
John Goggin. Absent is Tom Gressman. And Dan Allers, the council liaison, called and said he couldn't make it today, work conflict. Like, he doesn't need an excuse. Oh, Tom? Now absent. May just be late. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a good man. Chelsea? And one member from the department. All right. Approval of minutes from November 17th. Anybody have any comments on them? I had one. It was under member items. Member Nickel will schedule a meeting with the captain. I think that was referring to the county sheriff captain had made an outreach to everybody that he wanted to just have one-on-one meetings. The actual meeting with the captain, Ryan, I held that one, so I don't know if we want to clarify that it was the outreach from Ryan to Jim, or if that was to meet with them about the draft. I met with him about the draft and was going to return his call about the one-on-one meetings that he was having with like Dawn and Heidi.
Didn't happen. I didn't.
Have a motion on the minutes?
Motion we accept.
A second?
I second.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. And these for you right here, Chelsea, with that amendment. Did have, though, in our packet, did you include the October minutes in our packet that got sent out? For some reason. Okay, for some reason, those got printed when I printed out all the attachments, so I wasn't sure or not, but. Because the October ones that were sent are wrong. The one about we'd corrected them that it was Jim that nominated Heidi. You got his name spelled 2 different ways in here. And I'll leave this with you with the notes. Public comment? All right. So, research and make recommendations, community policing and neighborhood watch. Did you hear back from him, the captain? I met with him. Well, I met with the captain, and I don't remember the date, but it was shortly after that. Chelsea and myself and Captain, pronounce his last name? Ryan. We met and went through the draft, and he took a copy of it. And what was agreed to at the time was, and this was before Thanksgiving, that they was going to print out a similar report to the one that we've seen before. They had the summary that kind of goes through and shows the number of DWIs, the number of area checks, et cetera. but he was gonna break it down by zones, the north zone and the south zone, which breaks down around 3,000 Estero Boulevard. The idea was he was gonna come to this meeting, we would have those, and we were gonna go through each individual item on there. And in doing that, be able to eliminate a number of those that aren't really calls per se. For example, area checks, that just means they're sitting somewhere. There are other things on there that have no relevance to what we would have as community policing, or even the way they've done some enforcement. By eliminating those, we'd get it down to those that actually were areas that could possibly do something with education, with lighting, with some policies on bike riding and where they can ride it, et cetera. But a report didn't come in. So if you can continue to follow up with him, we'll do that in January. In the meantime, what I'll do is Chelsea will get a hold of you guys, and we'll do the same thing. It's to go through the reports and the draft and try and narrow it down, because the numbers, when I looked at the one with the sheriff and went through it with him briefly, numbers go down dramatically, and the locations change dramatically as to what people perceive to be the big issues on the island and the reality of what is an issue and what isn't an issue. No, we haven't done, the fire department, I'll do the same thing, just to take them through the draft, go through the thing, and then it'll be what was agreed, I believe, and so correct me if I'm wrong, is that I would do the initial just to walk them through the draft, explain what we're trying to do, take a look at the type of reports they have, and talk about the best way to present that report to this full committee. Full committee, so I didn't go through and with the sheriff, we didn't go through and eliminate anything. All we did is looked at what was there and the best way to present that to this group for a full group discussion of every single item that's on there. Yes.
Whole committee.
And then it comes to the full committee, and then the committee will take those reports and winnow them down to the areas that we could actually affect some change on, or potentially affect change on. Eliminate the rest of the information on there, so that when we go back to the council, January, February, whenever we get back to them, we'll be able to take that full report of, 1,000 some calls and actually show it to be, in reality, these are the only ones that we actually can affect any change on as, the town. So we'll do the same both for the fire and the other. The other thing that Brian was gonna do is he's gonna do a 3-month report. And so we'll look for something similar from the fire department, just to get to trends. You'll notice on there's a lot of there's one burglary or one robbery, and then there's, well, you know this, Jim, but a burglary versus a robbery versus and so it's trying to sort all that stuff out. That would, we agreed, because the sunshine would be done with a full group, correct?
Yes.
Everybody will see it. That's where we stand on the reports from the sheriff. So now, if you can, once again, follow up with Brian, pick him for the January one. Set up the meeting. When we meet with them, we'll do the same 3 months probably. It was November, October, September is the time frame that we use for the, at the time it was, you may move that to December now, so. And you set up some time and 3 of us will get together and we'll go through with the fire department, the same thing, the draft, it takes a hard time. So the next part of this then would be the, any questions on those reports and what's going on? We're just kind of waiting on the sheriff right now. It was agreed that that will be coordinated through the town staff. I wasn't picking on you about that. We know that it's going to be coordinated. Let's talk about the survey. Dawn put together a rough draft. You want to take us through this and then we can start asking questions?
Well, the only reason I threw this all together as a starting point, because I think I didn't get any feedback. Originally, I thought everybody was going to kind of shoot me some questions, and then I didn't get anything, so I thought, you know what? I'll start the ball rolling. You can always butcher it, and go from there. So these were just me coming up with some comments and suggestions that we've all talked about in here. They're by no means, like I put in there, other question mark, and, other questions that we need to throw in there. Really, I was doing this as a jumping, jumping point for you all to go, all right, I wanted to ask more questions about this. I wanted to add this section. I wanted to, in the pedestrian issues. I just did 2 questions. Well, you might have more that you wanted to throw in there. So again, starting point. Yes, I thought everybody was going to get this ahead of time and then just start zinging things toward me, and I just would put together, mesh together if there was doubling up and things like that. But I'll just start from the beginning, and you guys can, I'll butcher it as we go along. I don't know if you want me to go through it all, but these are the 6 items I thought we had discussed: pedestrian safety, homeless persons, bike traffic lanes, county sheriff response, street lighting, neighborhood safety. I don't know if these are worded exactly the way you want them. I don't know if there's something I'm missing, something that doesn't need to be in here.
So first off, maybe it was when the email was down. I did send comments back.
Well, I didn't get any of those.
Just general comments on survey, so it may have been when email was down, so I'll resend that. It went with things, and I'll bring some of them up here, but I don't know that I'll recall them all. But that does raise another issue that when we ask for comments, please take the time. I know the last couple of times I've talked to Chelsea, we drafts together of things. She hasn't gotten any comments from anybody, so please, during that month, 2 weeks, 4 weeks we're off, take a look at drafts that come out and comment on them. I mean, this is only going to get better if you can do that. So I just encourage you to take 5 minutes and go through them and whatever the draft may be. Maybe the best way to do it is start with number 1 and see what kind of questions, comments, things people would have on pedestrian safety, and work our way down through the list here. So pedestrian safety, anybody got any additional thoughts on what they would like in that when we talk about pedestrian safety?
I think when you go to the pedestrian safety, it goes back to bike lanes, crosswalks. To me, that kind of all goes together.
So, okay. So in the crosswalks, I guess, go along with what Heidi's saying, it's really, is a crosswalk, you got too many, too few, I agree with that, but the bigger issue we hear a lot is visibility in the crosswalks.
Right.
And it's signage, the RRFDs, Ds. Those are the flashing lights that you see in some of them. Then there's the crosswalk lighting itself. And for the new members, I might clarify this if I get this wrong. When we first met with the original consultant that looked at the lighting study and met with the county, we were told that the street overhead lighting needed to be resolved before we could resolve the crosswalk lighting because of light blindness, basically, that the overhead lighting and the crosswalk lighting can conflict and actually cause blind spots in a crosswalk. And so we were waiting on first the lighting study, Ds, to be finished. But what was agreed to originally was that we were going to, the crosswalk design was to have overhanging lights from the sidewalk or the edge of the road that would overhang and shine down on the side, actual crosswalk from both sides. That was the design that was agreed to, but it was on hold pending the outcome of the overhead street lighting. So visibility in the crosswalks, and it's the visibility, is there enough signage, should we have the flashing? And I know if Tom was here, he'd be talking about the flashing lights, lighting itself, and then the markings. I know when I drive down the street, those white markings are getting pretty faded pretty quickly. They blend right in with the faded road. They're kind of hard to see. So I think when we're, and I don't know how much we can put into these monkey surveys, but those would be the 4 things that I would kind of like them to talk about, 5, including frequency.
What I'll do is I'll visibility and I'll add a bunch of subsets, and then they rate it good, Okay. All right, perfect.
I have a question. The council ever discussed overhead walkways for pedestrians? Get the pedestrians out of actual roadway? So
And this is a new council, so it could certainly change. Prior council, or councils, 1.5 councils ago, whatever it was, they were pretty adamant that that was not the atmosphere and the type of, it was the aesthetics, I think they talked about more than anything else, about having crosswalks over the sidewalks, that just didn't fit with the overall ambiance of the island.
Isn't that a moot point now that with Margaritaville's gonna have it over?
Which, as you remember, was not an easy thing to get through. So,
What if they approved it for Margaritaville?
again, the previous so it's come up before with previous councils. They were opposed to it. There is nothing wrong with bringing it up to the new council, because those certainly areas like down by Leno, where you have heavy traffic, Publix, another place where you have heavy traffic, those are legitimate things to have. So to answer your question, it's been brought up, previous councils proposed, new council, new model, now that they're putting one in for Margaritaville, those are legitimate things to bring once again.
Want me to add that as a question?
So one other thing with those, and try and find the right minutes. I'm making notes to remind myself. We had talked about a year ago, May, with the council. There are a number of different types of shelters and crosswalks, and there is a crosswalk model that you walk halfway, then there's a median, and then you walk down the median a little bit, and then you cross the other half of the street. And we had identified, I think it was 3 places where we had talked about those being the appropriate ones, and I know Leno was one of them. I know Publix and Newton Park was one. I don't remember what the other one was.
Bay Beach, I believe.
Yeah, Bay Beach, where there's a heavy crossing. And the idea is that instead of trying to get the long run, you remember a few years ago, a woman was killed trying to make the full length of the Cerro Boulevard. And now that it's wider, that's even a longer run that people have to make. In those high-density areas, we had talked to the council about putting in these median types of crosswalks. So I don't know if I'm making the image correctly, but you'd go to cross, halfway you'd stop, migrate down maybe 20 yards, and then you would cross again. The idea is that it gives them more time to cross, but it also forces people to look both ways. I'm sure you've all experienced the same thing I have. When someone starts walking, they make a point of not looking to see if there's any traffic coming. It's like, if I don't look, they won't hit me. Well, that's okay, good for you, but this forces people to look both ways, and it gives people more time to cross. It also gives people time to queue up. So I will look for those minutes that we had that discussion in and get those to you. I'll just give you the background on that, where they were going to be. We had originally had 10 shelters, I think it was, and 3 of them were supposed to be this tight. Anything?
I have my map too, I believe, that I can look at. I think it was wrote on there. I'll make a note of that.
Anything else on pedestrian issues? All right, homeless. I'm going to lead this off with the conversation with Brian. Made a point of stressing that homelessness is not a crime. And so when we talk about homeless, one of the things we have to do is be more specific. I hear, heard people say, well, homeless is an issue. And I'm not questioning that at all. What we need to do is make this definitive enough that they identify the type of activity so that we can determine, is there anything we can do? If someone just says, I don't like the homeless sleeping on the bench, well, is a criminal activity, the vagrancy, or is it just something nodded off on the bench because they've been on the beach for too long and a couple of beers in them? So one of the things that needs to be, when we're talking about the homeless, is addressing the specific activity that they're uncomfortable with.
Well, my question is very vague. You see that?
Yeah, and so with all of these, the thing that I asked when I first started reading this, when we get the answer to the question, is it actionable? Well, as we put the final survey together, I'll let you know I'm going to be coming back and saying, okay, but if they answer that, what's that tell us? Does it give us enough direction to say, this is what we should look at doing? So with homeless, if people say, I just don't like the homeless, they make me uncomfortable, that's not enough to do any take any action by either community policing, to move them along as best they can now, they said, but you get the idea. Homeless, what else do we need on the homeless to clarify that? Any ideas?
The only thing I was thinking of, as you just said, is when I met with Brian, said at night, that's what most of their job is doing. Off the island to, or moving them along. Is that a great way for, spending their time? Not so much, but again, you're saying it's not a crime, they're just trying to moving, keep them off people's property, so there is no problem. I don't know what questions to ask. That's something to think about.
I think if we can get it down and ask them an activity, it'll start helping refine that for us. If we tell them they must tell us the activity that they witnessed or that they experienced, by doing that, they could say the person was on my property, or
Trespassing would be one.
Yep.
One, yeah.
by getting activity, hopefully we can narrow that down some. In the end, we may wind up having to take a lot of this information and just go down and have Rexanne again meet with the church and kind of talk about what services they can help with and can't help with.
There was an incident, a friend of mine called in Lee County Sheriff's, and there was a homeless person on our street digging through trash cans. And there's little kids that live on the street, and they're out there riding their bike, and he's like getting in their way, and so they told her, they're like, well, is he hurting anyone? And she's like, well, no, but he's got trash spewed all over the street. And they're like, nothing we can do. But that, I don't know. I mean, I just don't think that's right either. They should have came out there and moved him along. But then, are we wasting our resources on moving a homeless person digging through the trash along?
If it's a real issue, this is where community policing would come in.
Exactly.
Yep. So that's why
Exactly.
identifying a situation like that, a suspicious person, someone that's being disruptive, whatever they are, you may not want to use current contracted sheriff resources, but we may want to have a combination of neighborhood watch and community policing as a way to, we've identified a suspicious person, and we would like the community policing to come down and deal with it before an incident does happen. That's a great example of where if someone were to put that activity, we would be able to categorize that into current contract, an opportunity for community policing. And if this is an issue that is widely brought up on the island, certainly one that they may want to invest the money in. Anything else on the homeless? I think the other thing with the homeless, kind of mapping my notes here, is what I'm hoping to be able to do after looking at some of the the summary reports here is if we can map homeless activity, like you were just talking about, in a neighborhood where a suspicious person or someone homeless was roaming around, and there's thefts or vandalism in the neighborhood. If we can start linking those, we may be able to help us develop a pattern where community watch would be, or neighborhood watch would be very effective, but also places where we would want the sheriff to start looking for these trends so that they can go on after these type 2 as well.
And if we're looking at information from the sheriff's department about crime, it would be helpful if they could tell us if that was involving homeless person or not. That way we get a sense of how much. Could be there's no problem at all with crime, or there could be a serious problem. We don't really know.
And that's exactly what we talked about, is when we're going through the detail reports to be able to answer those type of questions for this full group. Bike traffic. The only question I had on this one, Dawn, is we don't have the South Lane bike traffic. We've got South and North Mid. The South hasn't experienced any of that yet. Yeah. Still in the glory days right now with the rumbling roads and all the fun stuff.
The thing I have is, if you're going down on, whether you're in a car or on a bike, where they have the bus pull-offs, Bike lane blends right in with that bus pull-off. We definitely have to look at something for, the bike lane definitely needs to be a different color than, it's all white. Nobody knows that that's the bike lane, and that's, the bike is supposed to go over here, and the bus is gonna go over here. 'Cause you see it all the time. I almost hit somebody the other day again. Because they were not, where they're supposed to be.
Oh, if we put visibility in markings. And I don't know how much free form the Survey Monkey allows, but it's almost like, do you use them? If not, why not? I mean, I know why I don't some days, and some days I do. It depends on what's going on.
Right.
But and we'll talk about how to get this out to everybody to get them to reply, but one of the things, maybe we want to ask them, if they don't use the bike lane, why not? Is it fear of being hit because of visibility? Is it just they don't trust themselves on it? They don't trust our seasonal drivers, our residents?
John, I got some. E-bikes, that's a concern I have. You look in your rearview mirror and you see a bike behind you, a mile behind you or whatever, and all of a sudden it's right on you.
What do you want me to ask?
It's just, do we have rules, dealing with e-bikes?
As far as the sidewalk, as far as I know, not allowed on the sidewalk, but I think,
Well, I live on Estero
Beach.
Boulevard, and I'm telling you, they fly by the house at 30 miles an hour. You pull out with your car, and it's like they're right on you.
did you ask town attorney to give us the state rules on e-bikes? Are there any? I thought there was some speed limit thing on them. They had a yeah, as you recall, the legislation you sent me was, actually, we brought it up to the council and asked them to send a note against it. It was to allow e-bikes to have the same rights, basically, as a pedal bike.
Pedal bike.
So that e-bikes could, in fact, end up on a sidewalk. They were all there's three classifications of bikes. Two of them were power assisted, and they wanted to make them all as though you were on a regular pedal bike with no power assist, and that would have been disastrous down there. Because you think it's bad when the bike lane doing it. Get on the sidewalk, they're
To
doing it.
me, if they're doing 25 and 30 miles an hour, they need to get in line with cars, pass like a bike normally passes, stay in line right behind the cars.
So
They're going as fast as the cars are going.
we can find out what the law is on that. Maybe we can come up with something on a recommendation, or if the state law allows certain things, they're not going to overrule that, but if they don't, we got a possibility. E-bikes in general are, I think is a question. Not really sure what we can do with it yet, but if we can get that legislation, what the law allows, maybe we can come up with something. E-bikes are a problem, guaranteed. Policing services.
Are we at the Lee County Sheriff's response?
We're at number E, letter E, sorry.
I need to redo my numbers.
The one I had, is it designated or dedicated? We feel designated or dedicated?
Dedicated.
Okay.
What are we talking about there, Lee County Sheriff response? Number 4.
You mean, when I asked, do you feel that police requests responded to in a timely manner, that?
I don't know.
Is that what you're asking me, what that means?
I mean, is that coming to your house and when you call them, or?
So I was implying that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be a little more clear, but
I mean, anybody probably in here has called the police lately.
We've called them a couple times. I know Kath has, and not for us, but for different things she's seen, and they've been really a good response. I don't know. I don't know
I
what
think
the,
that's not a necessary question then, maybe.
What about their response being in time? I think it's a good question.
Okay.
You're rarely asking their perception. What's their perception of police response? If everybody says it's horrible, we either need to talk to them about what they're doing, or we may to look into more policemen.
Okay, I'll leave.
the one thing there, maybe we want to talk about, if they could tell us the incident, different instances would have different potential response time. You know, if they said, I heard a noise, I don't know, I can't think of something that might consider minor. There's a cat in the tree,
That'd be
the
too
palm
much
tree or
detail
something.
for a major survey. I think what we can do is then if we saw that everybody said no, then it would be, I don't think we could ask those kind of, what kind of call did you have? Oh, there'd be so many to go through.
They may have these times, meet with them, you know what I mean? Under call logs. They get the call and when
You should have all of that. Response is typically driven by availability of the officer,
Right.
proximity to the call, and the nature of the call, really.
Are we talking like, community policing or designated LCSO officers?
I was referring to LCSO in
Okay.
this section, which I can change it, not community policing.
Current.
Currently, the way it's set up, you know, with
Okay.
the people who are here, they're not designated to the island specifically. No, Brian's kind of designated here. We don't have two designated people like they've been talking about.
Right.
I could change that to county sheriff services so people know exactly what I'm talking about.
you got it on there, Lee County Sheriff response.
Trying to be clear. Other questions? If anybody to ask?
I think if we're gonna do this on the website where we have more flexibility and allow people, we should always end with an open-ended, a question where people can just say whatever they want. I mean, really, they might just
Or
provide us a
comment.
feedback that we didn't even think of. Someone brings up an issue. If we're doing it on a very structured, thing, that would be impossible. But if we have the ability to have an open-ended, any other issues of concern that you think we should be looking at or thinking about or whatever,
Do
something
that
along
under
those
each
lines.
one of these.
We put something in there about, LCSO and then the community policing as well?
I think that's a separate question.
Separate question?
I don't think people know what it is, so they're not gonna know how to answer that.
Maybe you put current policing services or something like that, for those people that have been following.
You're saying getting rid of response off there.
No, to the contrary, I think response needs to be there. I think that's an important question to ask the community. Are they satisfied with the response they're currently receiving from the sheriff? And
And
if
they
they're
call.
not, I mean, if it's the overwhelming response, people are not happy with the response, we need to look into why that's the case. Is the response, and is it truly a problem that needs to be addressed, or is it just perception that needs to be addressed?
This one here, I think that, we talk about dedicated resources, we also might want to pass that one by Roger for the current contract, you know, that he can have a conversation with Brian, only in that don't have them today, and if our contract doesn't call for that, kind of get a ballpark on if that's going to turn into something that, A, they can't do without community policing, or they won't do, or it's going to cost us an arm and a leg. So maybe a little more background before we put this out to the public as well.
Voting on, when are they voting on to designated?
Not until this is done. Their community policing decision will be based on what we come up with in our recommendation. Not based on, but it'll be fed with what we come up with here.
Got it.
I'm just trying to think back to conversations in the past about when they talked about having the same officers and the sheriff not doing that, I think it's just something, if you could follow up with Roger on that before we go down a path that we can't do anything about contractually.
And we are planning on having the sheriff in when we sort of dissect this a little bit. Part of that presentation can be to the whole group here about community policing, so we understand what their program is as well as the public, because the public has the option to watch this meeting. I was just asking the question, not really making a demand.
I think that's part of what, if we, was intended in the draft, is after we go through and identify what issues are still outstanding, that we would then say, okay, which of these can be dealt with community policing, which of these are dealt with neighborhood watch, which of these are dealt with lighting, markings, being able to take the issues that the residents feel are still out there after we've done our analysis, and then say, what is the way to address these issues? It's the perfect time for community policing come in and say, you got 10 issues, 8 of them, community policing would handle it this way, and this is the cost of doing that. And that would be the presentation, probably at a joint meeting with the council, so that we had one visibility to, so they didn't get one story at council, one story at the committee meeting, and try and mesh it. That would be a good one for a joint meeting.
Sounds good.
Anything else on the police services then? Move on to street lighting. You wrote omitting the turtle issue.
I didn't want to talk about the turtle issue because I felt like this was going to be like, it could sway into, well, we got to say, the turtles. I want to talk about just lighting. Is it bright? Is it dim? Is it dark? That's what I was kind of getting at this point. I want to hear, that street light should be qualified for the turtle. Okay, we get that. We're talking more. Are there any lights on your street, or is it pitch black and you're scared? That's kind of what I was getting at.
One of the things that, when I read this, I'd like to know if they're willing to pay for this. The original study, so like $6,000 or something, was really the one that was done by the county. I don't remember if you remember, Mike, but it was a very small amount. We were going to replace like 6 poles. It met with the state guidelines, and that's all they are for turtle compliance. And it was like replacing 6 poles, fixing changing the overheads on all of them. There was maybe a dozen lights that were broken or old style, misplaced, etc. And I think the guy's name was David, came in and presented to the committee, and it was, he told us it was turtle compliant. County asked him to base it on the best financial solution that met our lighting needs as well as compliant. And it never really got off the ground, because after we listened to him, he presented to the council, and right away it got into turtle compliance. No one ever asked, are the dozen lights that are broken where the disorientations were? If by doing this, would it have eliminated the disorientations that happened? None of that ever took place. We went right into, we can't do this, we need a whole new solution. So we went from a very reasonable solution, ideas of the town taking over and building their own lighting, to a multi-million-dollar solution that we probably have to float bonds for, take more loans for, and now we have another study we'll hear about shortly. So I'd be interested, are they willing to pay for, how much are they willing to pay for hybrid lighting, or however we want to phrase this based on this study? Because I've heard both. I've heard people say, that's nice that we want to take care of the turtles, but I don't want to go broke doing it, and I don't want to spend 10 years getting it up and running. To other people that are adamant that we have this responsibility to protect every hatchling that comes to the beach. And so we have both sides, as the country has and everything else. I'd really be interested in, are people willing to pay, and if so, how much are they willing to pay? Ballpark.
Would your question you want me to ask as a separate one regarding the turtle streetlights, would you be willing to pay an extra tax to have, how that's gonna go?
call, we'll get some,
I can tell you
we'll
that.
get some feedback.
But I'd like to get it. All right, I'll add that on there.
I think it's important because we have very vocal people and they're very passionate and they're very, they're very pure about what they're trying to do. And there's other people that are saying, hey, this was a tough year, and we've got 10 million we're floating right now for 3 projects. We've got stormwater, we've got fresh water, we've got tens of $1 million in loans out there that we're repaying over the next few years, and they're gonna say, do I wanna add another X million to put in lighting? I think it's important that they get the feedback from the town.
On about that original study that you were talking about that got overlooked and sidetracked into the trails, was it, was the study, I mean, it was done by the county, you said?
Done by a consultant through the county's municipal planning organization for us.
Okay, well, would it be safe to assume that when the study was done, that the turtle lighting and impact to the turtles was considered?
I think the guy said this will be safe for the turtles, but then the turtle activists, let's call them that, said no, that's not what, that won't work. So it was more of a,
Why wouldn't it work?
I don't know.
What was
There
their?
are
That's
two
why we have
two
another-
different stand,
I just know.
This is why we have the third consultant coming in, fourth consultant coming in, maybe not, but this is why they're doing another study. There was a couple issues that came out of that, and one of them was, and I can get you the original study, the thing was, it was pretty intense. And it provided for the same illumination on the entire boulevard, so that you wouldn't get the dark areas, the bright areas, that your eyes would have a consistent lighting. But there were 2 issues that came up. One was that it was felt that it was not compliant with the latest federal guidelines. Was it Florida Wildlife, FWC, and DOT, they went back and forth, and we tried to get some clarity as to what is the guidelines. Well, they're guidelines, and this group agreed, this group didn't agree, so there was no consensus on what really the guidelines were. And then the other issue that came up in there was health factor, the lighting. I wish Dan was here because this is especially, but it talked about the lighting. Certain lumens were hazardous to certain people's health because they saw that some article was written by the AMA or New England Medical Journal or something. So a lot of information was poured into this discussion with the council. That point is when they decided to go, all right, let's stop and let's get a consultant. And we're now attempting to get the 4th consultant to come in. First one came in through the county, said that this did meet the guidelines, it would provide the appropriate lighting, and it was done in a financially feasible way. Also, at that time, wanted another study. They were looking at amber lights. And the whole question came, well, is amber lights protecting the pedestrian as well as the white lights? And it was no, the visibility is less. So they went back and forth on that for a while. One thing that does stand out is that at the time, every council member said pedestrians take precedent over everybody. And now, 2 years later, we're still looking for a consultant that will give us recommendations so that we can even move forward with talking to FPL or a private one or taking it over ourselves. Relatively fair assessment, Chelsea?
The FPL, no. Ultimate,
It should be.
that they would have to be compliant with all wildlife regulations, so the various,
You would think so. However, one of the council members very adamantly said they didn't, I don't want to use the word trust FPL, but their experience with FPL is that they didn't necessarily want to take what FPL said as the given rule on that. And so that pushed it into the consultant.
we're on our 4th.
I hope we're going to be on our 4th. We'll find out in a couple of minutes. So going back to the original, yeah, I'd like to know if more people are willing to pay and basically how much they're willing to pay. We have a lot of debt for a small little community, and it's great stuff they want to do. And as Jim says, we're transforming the island. But we're probably, I think, stormwater and water. We're 50 million, 60 million homes that would be going out here. If you look at the size of the island, that's a pretty good chunk of change. Anything else?
When
we
you-
gotta get away, we don't wanna be turning lights off. Or
Right.
turtle lights off. Full season.
It amazes me that they're willing to stick millions of dollars into like Bayfront Park, Times Square, Bay Oaks, which, yes, they do need some renovations, but they don't care about the lighting. Lighting has been going on and on and on for so many years,
Oh.
and they keep pushing that to another consultant. They're dead set on getting Bayside Park done. Seems like we don't have our priorities in the right line. That's just my opinion.
Well, hopefully we'll get another study, it'll be objective, and, you know, I think everybody agrees that we want something that will protect. We are blessed to have the turtles and have a beach that allows that, but, just need to balance it, and I'm hoping the study allows us to balance that. Thanks. We'll be in touch. All right, anything else on the street? So, the B here, do you feel the lights on your home street are adequate? If they could just put the street name.
I didn't know if we did that at the I kind of did it at the very bottom. I thought, where do you live, like, what street do you live on? Then maybe we could find some mapping software where we could kind of all that stuff, but we could add it there too. Mine would be no. It's very dark.
Where do you live?
Palermo. You'd think it'd be bright, but when you turn down, it is pitch black till you get back.
Anything else on the street lighting? Right, neighborhood safety.
Really vague. Didn't know what else to ask.
It's the right questions, really. It's a perception of people. You're asking people's perception.
Right.
Do you feel safe? And if not, why not? That's the only other question I would ask.
Maybe we could add in there, as your neighborhood experience, burglaries, thefts, or, thefts, vandalism, suspicious person, a couple of qualifiers, and like why they don't feel safe.
Of them.
I'm gonna take all this stuff, I'm gonna send it to you. We're gonna have to find. This is so bad, I'm trying to make it so it is yes, no. Rate it 5 to 10 or 1 to 10, whatever.
Maybe on this one, Dawn, after we go through the list of activities with the sheriff next month, they may come up with ones that will be triggers for you, like a theft or vandalism. We may be able to use the things that we can actually take action on, do something about. We talk about suspicious person, that's more of a touchy-feely thing than theft. If your neighborhood is plagued by theft, then that would be more direct and something the sheriff should be doing some of their area checks in that particular neighborhood versus somewhere else, maybe. May help stimulate that granularity for you. All right. Anything else people want added to this survey? You mentioned, leaving one that says other issues that people may have that they want to bring up.
Or maybe like, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, only if our means permits it, like if we're on the webs, if it's something the town controls and they can add that, I think it'd be helpful.
Can we add, like, under our survey, like, we have A, B, C, D, and D be other comment? Is that something that we can do? So then, like, if they have,
Put. Okay, it goes I don't know what the heck's going on.
We can hear you.
Okay, so put required you want, and then I will work technically back in to see what can happen.
Got it.
So now that we've gone through this with Dawn, and thank you for putting it together, take a look at it as you're, over the next few days, weeks, as you just drift back on this, keep these in mind, and if you have any comments, any additional things, feed them to Chelsea. Something that may have come up after you leave the meeting, feed them to Chelsea, and Chelsea will feed those to Dawn as they work on coming up with the next draft. So what we'll do is shoot for the January meeting to go through another draft.
And we're having, our meeting's earlier, isn't it? January. We didn't change it. Remember you sent an email, like,
Oh, we did change it.
my bottom line is, I'm gonna make these changes unless you shoot her something. I'll have them done by the end of the week, or beginning of next week, off my plate, and, so I'll give you some time. Get it before then. Add that to my to-do list.
All right, next up on the agenda, hey, lighting study.
Okay, says it's green and. Okay, so we are under the cone of silence for the lighting study, but I can just give advisory committee that we are gonna interview 2 of the firms at a date to be, because we're under.
Well, the good news is you did get responses, and 2 firms are gonna be followed up with. Positive.
So then also.
Mike's our representative, just to remind everybody that Mike is the representative for the PSC on that group.
So similar to the very big RFP that was put out, will be a project advisor that will consist of somebody from contracts executed underway, but it's county, from staff, from federal time is another one, so there will be a project advisory committee.
Do you think it's feasible in January to tell us some kind of time frame for the interviews and selection ballpark?
We'll see. It depends on the response. We're under the cone of silence until.
I get that. I'm just, this is, as you've heard, this has been an issue that's been out there for a long time. And it would be nice if Roger could give the council some ballpark in January as when they meet as to when they hope to have the selection process. Just a thought. For the bridge.
Question.
We were gonna meet with them, ask them questions.
They are coming in January. If you guys have questions that.
January now? Last, Roger told us was February or March.
Okay, there is a January 28th. We haven't formally published it yet. It's supposed to be.
While we wait, as a side note, I have not seen so many people cross at the base of the bridge as I have in the last, they're running, and cars are coming down the bridge, slamming their brakes on, and people are running.
Whatever I'm doing. He said, whatever I'm doing, it's working. So on January 28th, FDOT is holding a public meeting in Bay Oaks. Starting
Okay,
28th of January.
Oh, because I looked at the minutes and Roger said February, meeting with the council to come up with an agreed plan.
I don't know that FDOT has published that everywhere yet, but
Let's see, what's the purpose of that meeting?
I believe it's the 65 project. Of the bridge design will be a change order to the project.
Is it an informative meeting, or is it
But it's a public meeting. So I don't have, whatever FDOT says is a public meeting.
The last time they did it, they had, I want to say, 3 or 4 different models up on boards, and they had engineers there, and you could walk around and talk to the engineers and give the engineers your input. They would give you their feedback. And one of the feedback was the old San Carlos, and how the guy actually watched people push baby strollers out in front to stop traffic. And they said that's the way they used to get people to stop so they could cross down there. He said it was very common, and they had come up with a way to get people to stop using their child as the way to cross by sticking them out in front of you. So it was informative, not necessarily in a good way, but it was informative. Here's my issue, though. Roger's comment was we would go there and we have public comment. We still have not, because of COVID, we never got the opportunity to meet with, blanking on the guy's name, the guy that runs the project here for the county. Rob. Rob had talked back in March, before we started canceling meetings, to bring in and talk to us about the 0 crosswalks to the 8 to 12, whatever it is today. Background, I mentioned this last time. This group came up with a design that showed 0 crosswalks because of what you mentioned on to keep foot traffic out of there. Mayor and the town manager met with the county staff, or the county executives, and they came back and said, we agreed to. They voted on that design a short while ago. And so the question really is, that's what the council said they'd go along with all those. The issue that I've had, and I grant you I'm driving this thing like maybe it shouldn't be, we never got the feedback that the county told us they would give us as to why they needed the 8 to 12 and why some of the barriers we had talked about putting in, some of the directional things that we had talked about putting in wouldn't work. Never indicated that they actually did the detail on each one of those to look at it. Rob didn't. That was what we were going to do at the meeting. So the question really becomes for the group, do we just give up and say, okay, council voted on it, the hell with it, let's keep moving forward? Do we make one more run at the council and say, ask them, tell you why each of those 12 crosswalks can't be diverted the way it was recommended by this group? I don't agree that we should go as, we should definitely go as individual citizens, but I don't think the advisory group should come up with one position and the council have another one. The only position that should be going in front of that group as a official town thing is from the council. The question comes, do we make one more run at the council and ask them to specifically ask for that? Or do we just accept that they're happy with the crosswalks as designed and we let it go and move forward? That's kind of where I am right now. So I'm throwing it out for a comment.
I vote we go one more run at the council. They haven't built it, why not try?
I agree.
I agree.
So I'll come up with something, write it up. I think you gave Dawn and Suzanne the design we came up with, that thing. Remember you sketched it out and then you put it on there. I will make one more run at the January meeting. I will go and ask for, give them an update on what we're doing with the survey, what we're doing with the fire and with the sheriff on the process. And I will make one more run on, this was a design that we recommended. We would like to know if you want to pursue with them each of these crosswalks as to why they have to have it under engineering studies or not. So I'll do that at the January meeting. Yep.
Then if you, being a part, it will just there a week.
All right, that's where we are then. That was the foot of the bridge.
Word built.
Every fourth word stop. Okay. They said still.
I'll talk louder.
All right, Bay Oak Shelter.
Road shelter.
Oh, yeah. Bay Road.
Cooler. Okay, so it's green. Anywho, I did get confirmation from Lee Tran. I actually reached out to them last week to find out what the status of that bus shelter is. They said they will have it in my eye on the green light, making sure it's on, before the start of their seasonal service. He did email me yesterday and asked if the library, I think there was bicycle racks, if there was a bicycle rack nearby, and the library does provide bicycle racks on their site. So did say that they will have the shelter in place for the start of their season, which is, I think, right after the new year. Also, to that effect, this committee had inquired for the blue. I actually met with a representative a week and a half ago, and he stopped by again today. I had to give him the as-builds for the conduit so they could price it out, turnkey project. I have that official quote. He told me by today, tomorrow, so I'll actually have a true price to turnkey install a code blue shelter. And I will report to this committee. I get it.
Excellent.
Where do we want to go directly to? Oh, if you give me that, then I can add that to the January meeting. Okay, good. With that, we also talked about the AED packs.
That I told the code blue guy to give me every bell and whistle, no pun intended, offer.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll take and make that official, because we all agreed we wanted to do that, so I'll make that the official request or recommendation at the January meeting as well.
And I did ask him what like the turnaround was for like from the date of PO issued to install, and he said that they've got a pretty good turnaround. So it wouldn't be some crazy lead time to from ordering to installation. So promising.
Okay, thank you. Sidewalk markings. This is the interlocal. Ann was going to bring up the interlocal for sidewalk markings for the bike and walk. Did that happen?
I'm not sure if the council, at a council.
I'll check with Dan. I'll remind him. He knows what I'm talking about. This was the sidewalk markings in the shared areas where you would have a bike arrow direction so people go the right way and the pedestrian walker on the other one. And we needed the interlocal with the county because it's their sidewalks. Okay. Member items. Mike, you got anything?
No, I don't.
Ann? All I got is, it's on me, I never followed up with you and Randy about the cost of bikes, bells and lights and stuff. Oh, we gotta do that. I think the other is, I'm hearing a lot of complaints about people going the wrong way with their bikes on the sidewalk and pedestrian, the cyclists versus people coming out of the side streets. We should give some thought, and if the group would give some thought to how we can help the public information officer, maybe get some more information out there with people about, we have sidewalks on both sides, they're the same size sidewalks, they're beautiful sidewalks on both sides, and yet the bay side seems to be dominant with people going the wrong way. And you see it all the time where somebody's pulling out, they're looking at traffic coming up, and they're not looking at the bicyclist that's cutting in front of them. That's just an accident waiting to happen, and maybe they are happening and we're not hearing about them. But I think we need to look at some kind of education around that.
I think I sent out the tips and tricks from before. You guys get that? I'll resend it, and if you have any that you want to add or edit or tweak, sit down with Jenny. When first started is when I mentioned that to her, to start to add it into the newsletter or a Facebook post or Twitter post, whatever social media platform she prefers. But if you guys have some new like tips and tricks, safety tips, this is something, Carroll Boulevard up to has sidewalks on both sides. Follow.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of something more right in their face that says, A, no electric bikes, no golf carts on there. In addition, but more of than just a cute little phrase. Maybe there's an article that really stresses that, and maybe even getting something that we can get the bike rental companies to start handing out. Most of them aren't rentals that are doing this, but I think we're gonna see that more as the season picks up. This is becoming, at least I'm hearing a great deal, people complaining about bikes going the wrong way and conflicting with the vehicle traffic out there.
I do want to mention too that with all of like our social media posts and platforms, he is able to see how it's what the outreach is, the responses on those types of things. So there's somewhat of a measurable tool, but what grabs people's eyes more like that. So that tool available.
Would it be possible to actually post signage where bicycles are relegated to the sidewalk because there's no bike lane downtown area? Actually post signs that's one way, bicycles one way, either side of the street, so that a person would immediately see that they're not supposed to be going backwards on the sidewalk in that area.
Any signage in on Estera Boulevard has to be approved by Lee County if it's not under the town's domain.
This is one reason we wanted the sidewalk markings that showed that.
Right. Maybe you could even put a designated arrow with the mark.
I don't know if I know I don't have it with me, but the design was a bicycle, and then it actually had the arrow showing the direction the bike should be going.
That would work. Perfect.
That is what the thing was to be showing. But again, I'll follow up with others there and find out.
We all have experience at this now because of Publix, where they had the aisles that were.
Yeah, I'm not sure from what I hear that we want to use that as the model. Okay. Anything else on the member items? Chelsea, you got anything?
Just one last thing, anytime I can get this out there, we have a hazardous waste collection day in early February, so start collecting your paints and batteries and fluorescent lights, things like that to that event. It's for residents, it's for islanders here.
Where's that gonna be?
It'll be at Bay Oaks, the pool parking lot, as it was last time. We have one a quarter.
Okay, then next is to set the meeting agenda for the next meeting. I just haven't think about this. So I'll get that note to the presentation to council for the meeting in January. I do circulate that through Chelsea so people can add to it before I actually go and read the thing to them. I'll get that to Chelsea before Christmas. When's the first council meeting in January? Any idea?
They're on odd days because.
Anyway,
I'll let you know.
I'll get it to you before Christmas so you can just get it distributed, and then after Christmas you can have the comments collected and I'll edit it, and then that's what we'll present.
Okay.
So for the next agenda, what I have so far is the Lee County Sheriff and Fort Myers Beach Fire Department, the reports, and to dissect the reports, a review and of the survey draft, update on the shelter, and an update on the sidewalk markings, update on the lighting study. They got anything else for the next meeting?
Are you saying you want to remove the foot of the bridge status?
But we leave it on there, and depending on when our meeting is in relationship to the council, because we report to the council first and we get feedback, then we'll provide the feedback. If we don't, then we'll just say it's still pending and report to the council.
I'll send a reminder because we did have to move the meeting next month. So I will send a reminder out to everybody of that date and time.
When is it? Our
Couldn't
meeting.
tell you right.
13th now.
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's Wednesday the 13th. We moved it back one day. At least that's what I got written down after we talked last time.
Let me confirm, because I have Anchorage Advisory Committee too. I will send you an email
have a conflict on the 13th, but our commission.
Anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's an entertaining one, so.
Make it, I'll second it.
All right, so we moved in second and we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.